What's up, everybody? I'm back with a review for the latest Marvel movie, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Wakanda Forever. Oh, I'm pretty sure I seem to recall the thumbnail of my Black Panther, or maybe it was some video around the time having me going like this for some reason. So now it might be this thumbnail too. Who knows if the YouTube decides to choose one of me doing that gesture. Uh, Anyway, I reviewed the first Black Panther back in 2018. I did not watch that review to refresh my thoughts on it because who cares? I really liked this one though. This sequel. Um, I'm not sure if it's a better movie than the first one, but I enjoyed it more than the first one. That's because I say that because this is a very good Marvel movie with some high highs, and that sounds like I'm gonna follow it up with some low lows. There weren't low lows. This is just a very. I'll start with the negative. This is a messier movie than the first Black Panther, and I give it. I'll give it a pass on a lot of that because they rewrote the whole story after Chadwick Boseman died. For those of you who don't know, the actor who played T'Challa in the first movie died of cancer last year, 2020. I don't know, like recently, in the last few years, and it changed the track of the script for the movie. T'Challa's character was killed off, not in a like movie way, but just like in the movie, he dies from an undefined illness that's clearly supposed to sort of parallel the emotional situation of the actual actor dying. And so a lot of the movie becomes about these Wakandan characters grieving his loss, which I really like. I know there are some people who are like they should have just recasted him, or even that it feels a little disrespectful to like take that grieving process and publicize it. And I disagree with that take. I think from an as an artist, I think it's valuable that like they were able to channel the grief that the actors and the directors and writers were clearly feeling and use that to build this movie's strengths. Like you get to see each character grieve for T'Challa, and in that you kind of also see the actors grieving for their friend Chadwick Boseman. The only place where it gets a little morally weird is just in the marketing of the movie. They really put so much of the marketing of this movie is like, how are we going to honor Chadwick Boseman's legacy? And it's weird to use how are we going to honor a dead man's legacy as a like selling point to get people to come see a movie. But that's not really why I wanted to see it. I just wanted to see it because I think Black Panther, and specifically the world of Black Panther, the nation of Wakanda, is one of the most unique settings, not just in the MCU, but I feel like in cinema in general right now. Like, what other movies are about a highly technologically advanced African nation? Like the interesting mix of this like highly technologically advanced future nation with like African customs and traditions, obviously that made up like African customs and traditions made up for this fictional country, but like just the blend of that is so interesting, and that's why I like Black Panther. I don't really have an enormous attachment to T'Challa as a character, so watching this movie for me, the primary appeal was just wanting to see more of the Wakanda section of the MCU, and that's what you get with this. The fact that T'Challa dies, and it is, at least for part of it, an ensemble movie, is, in my opinion, one of the strengths and one of the things I was excited for going into this movie. I was excited to just see more of the myriad of characters that were introduced in the first Black Panther, to see more of the world of Wakanda and see that world also expand to take in this other minor spoiler alert, I guess, but it's in trailers, this other, like, underwater equivalent civilization where the antagonist, Namor, I said that in a weird way, Namor, it doesn't sound right coming out of my white mouth, Namor comes from, Namor, it's like one quick, it's not Namor, so I really like, I guess now we'll get into the plot. No, there's still a negative I gotta get to. I said it's sort of an ensemble movie for part of it, and the reason for that is that while it does focus and take the time to, like, give all these side characters from the first movie their due attention, the real main character of the movie is Shuri, T'Challa's younger sister, who is not, and this is a flaw of the movie, but it didn't bother me as much as I thought it would. Shuri as a character, I was not super, I mean, in the first movie, she is kind of just generic tech genius girl. And for a lot of this movie, I was sort of struggling to buy into her perspective as the main character. It doesn't help that the actress who plays her has gotten flack for being, like, anti-vax. So there's this weird sort of critiquing this movie is hard because there's a lot of real-life elements that bleed into the movie. And so it's like, on the one hand, yes, I can separate Letitia Wright's anti-vax sentiments from her character pretty easily. But on the other hand, and I can separate, like, people's grieving for Chadwick and, like, the death of that actor with the characters and the way they react to it in this movie, and the way they react to T'Challa's death in the movie. But obviously even just from my describing it, you can tell there's a bit of a blending of reality and fiction going on there that makes it hard to talk about this movie and take, like, real world stuff out of it. At the end of the day, I was able to watch the movie and, like, enjoy it and kind of separate the real world stuff. At least the stuff with Letitia Wright, Shuri. I feel like the T'Challa stuff, they almost don't want you to separate it. There's a lot of, like, the movie opens with Shuri reacting to T'Challa's death, and then they do the MCU intro thing with no music over it and doing an intro that is just footage of Chadwick Boseman. So I don't think it's gratuitous. It feels respectful, but it's also weird to be put into that kind of real-world emotional state, especially when you're coming out to watch a, like, big action movie blockbuster, like a Marvel movie. But it does do what that intro does do well of, like, setting the tone of this movie, because this is probably one of the closest a Marvel movie has gotten to being, like, a drama, like an actual character drama movie. I wouldn't define it as that genre, but it's certainly not a comedy like a lot of other Marvel movies are. It's far away from the tone of, say, Thor: Love and Thunder, the last Marvel movie that came out. It takes itself pretty seriously. It has comedy, like, you know, there's jokes occasionally, but they don't stop to quip. There's not a bunch of one-liners. The characters interact very well. The most, like, jokey it gets is when they introduce Riri Williams' character, Ironheart, who's honestly a lot better implemented in the movie than I thought she was going to be. Like, her presence there actually does play an important role in the plot. So it isn't just like, oh, we're shoehorning in this character that we're going to make a TV show about later. That being said, she does add to the messy, overstuffed nature of the movie, because we have a whole, like, first act plot line that's going and getting her and trying to, like, protect her from Namor, who wants her dead because she invented something that is a threat to his, like, civilization, basically, to his secret kingdom. It's interesting how Namor what is the word I'm trying to say? It's interesting how Namor parallels, thank you, T'Challa's arc from the first movie, where Namor is the ruler of a hidden kingdom using vibranium, that has used vibranium to become extremely technologically advanced, and he does not want the kingdom to be known to the world because he dislikes, imperialism, colonists, other countries. They made him, and from what I know, this is different than in the comics. He's just from like Atlantis, but here they changed it to where instead of Atlantis, this is like a Mesoamerican underwater city out on the like Yucatan coast, which I think was a great change for like making this character fit into the Black Panther storyline narrative, because he's from another hidden non-white kingdom that has used vibranium to become big and doesn't want the like colonizers to come in and try to take what's his. So even though he's the antagonist of the film, he has motives that are understandable. Like I wouldn't call him a villain, even though he does some very villainous things in this movie. And he's just a great character. I'm glad that, spoiler alert, but I figured you might want to know. I'm glad they didn't kill him off. I was worried they would, because Marvel doesn't keep a lot of its villains alive. They usually are one movie and then they disappear. But he's alive here, and there's even a like ending scene, not a post-credits scene, but a scene at the end, sort of teasing his like long game, which is great. We need more like sort of anti-hero antagonist pseudo villains in the MCU. Characters like Loki, and I guess now Zemo is kind of like that after Falcon and Winter Soldier. But anyway, Namor is a very cool villain. At least as good as Killmonger from the first movie. I actually might like him more than... I find his motives more sympathetic than Killmonger's from the first movie. You're free to disagree with me on that. I think both of them are great characters with like great motivations. And I think all the characters are just very well written in this movie in terms of their like motivations and their actions, and also in the case of those who are from Wakanda, the way that they're grieving for T'Challa. Like Shuri, I mentioned that Shuri was like the tech girl in the first movie, and I think they do something really interesting with that, where she's sort of at conflict with her society's traditional religious beliefs and like her grief over her brother, which kind of encourages her to turn to science and sort of reject the traditional customs, believing that they need to move forward rather than stick to tradition. And so there's this kind of conflict within her throughout the movie between sticking to like nobility and tradition and honor and seeking out progress and science and even vengeance. Like there's a really interesting scene midway through when she does get her Black Panther powers that I'm not going to spoil, but it's a really cool... She has an interaction with a very unexpected character, and it's an interesting moment that comes in there, like midway through the second act. Now, anyway, I'm jumping around a lot, but it's because I actually have a lot to say about this one. I think it's a really interesting story, and I think there's a lot of really cool elements in it. There, again, most of the rough parts to me just come from them not wanting to sacrifice anything of their story. Like they wanted to do the Chadwick honoring grieving thing, and they also wanted to do the Ironheart stuff, and they also wanted to keep in... This is actually a fairly big spoiler, so like fast forward maybe like 30 seconds and I'll be done talking about it, but they wanted to keep in the plot, or probably more than that actually. I don't know. Whatever. They wanted to keep in the Queen's death as well. There's the spoiler. All right, we're going to move on now. They wanted to keep in all of these elements, and while some of them do suffer a little bit from being in the same movie, it didn't bring it down for me. I was engrossed the whole way through in a way I have not been with a Marvel movie since No Way Home. Like, Doctor Strange and Thor were fun, I liked them, but I was not like, my eyes were not glued to the screen. I was not super invested in the characters' emotional struggles. I was just enjoying a good time at the movies with my friends. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever is a movie I was potentially going to watch it alone. I mean, I picked a day and I was like, I'm going to watch it this day. I told my friends, if you want to come, feel free. If you don't, then don't. So I was willing to watch it alone, and I think I would have enjoyed it just fine watching it alone. I think it holds up really well. It's like one of the most. I've heard it get some mixed reactions, and that's because it is a little messy, a little overstuffed, a little overambitious with all the different things it's trying to do. It's probably about 15 minutes too long. There's the Martin Freeman's character from the first movie, the white guy. He is in this movie, and he kind of has his own running subplot going through. And I was fine with it when I was watching because I thought it was going somewhere, but the subplot doesn't really go anywhere, at least within this movie. We find out that he is connected to the Julia Louis-Dreyfus character, whatever her name is, like Alec Contessa, some weird long-ass name. That the character from Falcon and Winter Soldier and Black Widow, who's sort of like the dark Nick Fury scheming behind the scenes. But, like, and that's, like, fine, a connection, and it made me think they were going to actually do something with that character that they keep teasing. But then she just kind of, like, once we hit the third act, those two characters are dropped off. So it's like, where this didn't go anywhere. The plotline literally does not go anywhere and could have been cut. And could have saved you, like, 10 minutes. I believe this is like, around a 2 hour and 45 minute movie, and it could have been cut down to a 2.5 hour movie. I firmly believe this could have been a 2.5 hour movie without losing anything important, and it would have been better had it been that, because this movie definitely feels long. Like, there's a end of the second act, there's Namor and his army, like, attacks Wakanda, and in my brain I was thinking, so this is the start of the third act, right? And then the spoiler that I mentioned earlier that I wanted you to that you might have fast forwarded happens, and I realized, oh, there's a whole third act left, and it's like a good third act, but it tests your, like, it's one of all the Marvel movies I've seen, it's one of the ones that has tested my patience for, like, how long am I sitting here in the theater the most. But also, that's true of, like, a good meaty drama. So I don't even know, I feel like it kind of just adds to the movie's drama. Like, it is an action movie. It is a superhero movie at the end of the day, but it also the reason it's long is because they were unwilling to sacrifice the, like, character drama stuff to keep the movie tight. Clearly there was the higher ups let it be as long as Ryan Coogler, the director, wanted it to be, and as a result it's a little too long, but it has a lot of good stuff in it, and I really I love Namor. I actually really love Shuri's arc, despite not that being that into her as a character. I love Angela Bassett's performance as the Queen is amazing. I wouldn't be surprised if she gets, like, an Oscar nom for it, which is, rare for a Marvel movie. But, like, the original Black Panther got nominated for Best Picture. I wouldn't be too entirely surprised if this one also gets nominated, although I feel like this year is much more stacked than, 2018, where the first one came out. I feel like this year's much more stacked in terms of movies, so I also wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't get an Oscar nom. I don't think it necessarily deserves one, but I also don't think the original Black Panther deserved one, so it's kind of like, if that one got one, I don't know, because I think this movie is as good as the first one. I probably like it a little better, just because of its ensemble world-building elements that are really, really why I like the Black Panther sub-franchise of the MCU, is for the world building. That's most of why I like the MCU, is world building stuff, and some of their stuff does it better than others, but the Black Panther series is one that, honestly, only the Guardians series rivals Black Panther in terms of world building within the MCU. There's just Wakanda is a really well defined setting, and its relationship with Namor's country, Talokan, is also very well defined in this movie. Also, the way they introduce Namor and his like soldiers, it's an early scene in the movie, and they go for like a horror approach with them where you don't really see them head on. There's a really cool shot where like Namor does something and you don't see him directly do it. It just happens, and then you see him like his silhouette hovering in the air, very Homelander-esque. It's like a really sick like introduction to this nation of underwater people, which is like was surprising for him. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that is surprising for him. The issues with Marvel right now is not that every project feels the same. It's that every project feels like it needed a little more time in the editor's room or the writer's room, or both. This movie is not immune to that, and neither was No Way Home. Like I said, I think that you could have made a little tighter of a cut of this, and I think it would be getting a more positive reception. Not that it's not getting a positive reception, but it's not getting the like hype and attention and acclaim that the first Black Panther got, which is a shame in my opinion, because I think it's a very worthy successor and something that does honor Chadwick Boseman's legacy and continue on this series in an interesting way. I'm excited to see where the world of Wakanda goes from here. Wakanda forever! Marvel! Okay, we're done with this video now. Arrivederci!